if you walk into a room, or if you're in a room and someone walks into that room and they're in a bad mood, and say they're in a senior executive role, the room shuts down. That's energy. No one said a single thing. And the opposite is also true. If you go into a room and there's sort of chaos in there, or confusion in there, or sort of uncertainty or unhappiness, and you go in there with clear, sort of calm confidence, you can change the room just by the presence.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership Launchpad, where we help technical managers improve themselves, their teams, and their organizations. Over the course of 20 years of working in aerospace and technology, I have gotten to work with some of the smartest people on the planet, and I have witnessed firsthand how many of them struggle making that first jump to being a people leader. On this show, we talk with industry experts, coaches, and authors to help give you actionable insights to help improve your own performance and the performance of those around you. Our guest today is Gjertsen. Gjertsen is a leadership performance coach and strategic advisor to executives and organizations, helping them maximize how they lead. We met at a networking event where he took a small group of learning practitioners through some great exercises to discover more about ourselves and the things we all have in common. He started his career working on world-leading brands such as the Grand Theft Auto series video games. And a few years ago, he decided to shift out of marketing and into leadership coaching. In this conversation, you can expect to learn how to identify your values as a leader, why you should be focusing on your strengths instead of your weaknesses, and how leaders can transform the performance of their teams by focusing on the energy and clarity they bring to every conversation. Before we get into that discussion, I do want to remind everyone that if you aren't subscribed already, make sure to hit subscribe, like the podcast. It really helps us. And if you are already subscribed, then I would ask that you share this show with at least one other person, because that, after all, is how we grow. I can't tell you how much it means to me. And with that, let's get into the conversation with Gjertsen. Gjertsen, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Making Better podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. I'm really excited to have you today and have this discussion. We met over dinner recently, a dinner where you kind of facilitated a conversation between a bunch of learning leaders from the LA area, and it was such a great conversation. And then as we got to know each other, I really wanted to have you on because you have such a different background than the majority of people that I've met in the leadership development and the coaching space. You spent the majority of your career kind of in branding and building some like major brands. How do you see, since you've just semi recently made that switch, how do you see that connection between, kind of the branding that you're used to of a company's brand and now like a leader's brand as you start working with individual leaders?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. I love brands, honestly. Like, the weird thing is, I love how they operate and how they communicate, and all the research shows is that we trust brands significantly. We trust them sometimes more than people in our lives, and that's because brands put a lot of emphasis on who are we, why do we exist, what are our values, who are we
Mm.
talking to, why are we communicating with them, what's the purpose of our relationship, what do we represent in culture. And actually, over recent times, so say in the last 5 or 10 years, brands have much more of a powerful voice in society than politicians or other leaders that we see often. So they represent us, and
Yeah.
we can cancel them at any single time if they do not represent us, and we cancel with not using our money, essentially. So the relationship with brands is really interesting. And then also, if you think about how we operate on the internet these days, a lot of say content creators and or influencers, they work with brands. They align themselves with
Yeah.
people with like-minded value systems, and there's an inherent relationship there. I've always thought about brands and people as sort of having a lot of crossover. So If you think about a human being, your brand is how you walk, how you talk, how you show up on your bad days, which is something I love to ask. It's like, if you having a really shitty day, how can we rely on you to lead us, to
Yeah.
engage with us, right? So that's part of your brand architecture, your system, as it were. So bringing it into, I'm a brand strategist by nature. I'm just curious like that. So then bringing it into as an executive coach and as a team performance coach, I use the same system. Who are you? Why are you? How do you show up? How do you add value? What are all the components of those pieces? And how do we rely on you? Because it's about authenticity and trust at the end of the day.
It really is. And I mean, I don't think it was our conversation, but I was just recently in a conversation with somebody who was really talking about trust from a way that I hadn't thought of before, in that really what trust is about is it's about expectations and like knowing what to expect from another person. And like kind of like when you were talking about brand, that's really the core of it, is like what it is. Like there's brands that you may like or dislike, but a strong brand just means you know what to expect, you know what it stands for. And ultimately that's really what it comes down to from a leader, is your people want to know what to expect. They know who's going to show up. They know that you do what you say you're going to do. So that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense that there would be that connection.
You remind me of what's that book? Is it called The Four Agreements or something?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's about your word. One of them is about your word, which is integrity, which is accountability, which is about responsibility, which is do what you say you're going to do. That's trust. Like it takes, uh, I forget who said this to me, but it always stuck with me is it takes years to build trust and seconds to lose it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's that idea that consistency, it's okay if you make mistakes as long as
Yeah.
you own up, and that's how humans relate to human beings. When your trust has been, when you're trusting someone has been shooken, shall we say, it takes a while to rebuild that relationship, and that's just an inherent way we operate. So of course, and brands track brand love or whatever their
Sure.
measurement is. So it makes we put all of our humanity into these things that are not human, because that's how we relate, that's how we communicate, that's how we rely on each other, and how we build community. It's how we build all relationships, honestly.
Yeah. You mentioned that you use basically many of the same skills or same tools that you used in working with brands, now working with leaders. Let's go. I'd love to go into that a little bit deeper. You mentioned some of the questions of, kind of how do you show up on a bad day and that kind of stuff. What are some other examples of ways that you kind of help a leader when you first start working with them, like understand their brand and create their brand?
Yeah, I always start with values, honestly.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
so the question for your audience that we met discussing was, what are qualities of great leaders that you most admire?
Hmm.
And that is a way for us to learn about the people that are in that room, or whether it's in your company or your team or your friend group or what have you. When you share what qualities it is you admire most in other people that you genuinely admire, we can learn from that how it informs who you are. And within that is your value system, and your values are how you communicate. So you may not know your value system, but you definitely know when someone treads on your values. You know when your
Mm.
values are not aligned, but you
Hmm.
may not articulated your values in a
Hmm.
clear way that you can remember them. So the first job is always to go to the core. At our core, we make decisions based on a value system. Everyone does it. So bring some more definition around that, and we do it through the lens of leadership versus management, because I'm working with executives, professionals, teams. So, who are you in this situation? And who are you in this situation? And why is it important? When you're in this situation, say a leadership, it's about being a human being, communicating with human beings,
Yep.
going somewhere. And in this situation, it's more about management per se, is like operationalizing things and stuff to achieve whatever we're looking to achieve. So you might need to have different values to help you
Interesting.
manage through that. So it's all about bringing awareness. The statement that I use a lot, which I really love this statement, it's a big driver for me in my own life, which is great leadership starts with self leadership, which
Yep.
starts with self awareness.
Yep.
So self leadership is how you command yourself. It's how you make decisions. It's how you show up. It's how you're consistent. It's how you're reliable. But self awareness is, why do I make those decisions? What is it that's
Yeah.
triggering all of these things? So it's, values is the first. The second is strengths. What are your
Got it.
strengths?
Got it. So on that values piece, I guess when you're first, and you're typically working with more senior folks, but how often, when you ask a question, kind of like, what are the leadership qualities that you admire? How many people have not taken a lot of time to reflect on that stuff or see that there's a difference? Because I think leadership is one of those things very often where we're kind of thrust into it and we just kind of start doing, and it's easy
Yeah.
to just you get rolling, and very often you're it's like the age old thing of you grow up and you become your father or something like that, and you hated everything your father did and you just become it because you just start doing stuff. How often do you find that when you ask it, the question in that way of like, what are the qualities that you most admire, maybe they've never really reflected on that and seen that they're not living up to those things?
Yeah, I love that you're referencing that, because it's that you're talking about conditioned behavior.
Yeah.
We turn into our fathers because that's what we grew up learning. We don't know any different. So it's about conditioning, and this is about, it's adjacent to that. It's really about recognizing that there's more information here, and maybe you're operating like your father, and only you're picking up things that you don't like, damn it, I'm doing what my father did, I promised I said I would never do that. But you also might be doing 90% of what your father did that you admire. You just haven't thought about it, because in nature,
Mm,
by nature, we, in our heads and in our bodies, we isolate what we're not doing very well. We
yeah.
focus on what we're not achieving during the day, what we haven't achieved during the week, or I'm a bad at this, I'm bad at that, I'm not good at this. It's just sort of an inherent human condition. My job is to help you also recognize what you are doing well and what it is that
Sure.
you do really enjoy, because that's actually where fulfillment is, and happiness is, and joy is, and all of these other things. And we want you to be making decisions based on things that motivate you and encourage you and grow you, and also then recognize the things that you don't like doing and either correct them, edit them, delete them, do whatever we need to do, but move through them.
That kind of links to what you were just saying. If you said you start with values and then it's all about strengths, I'm based on what you've been saying, I'm guessing I can kind of pick up where you're going with this question. But there's kind of that question of like, do I work on my strength? Do I maximize my strengths or minimize my weaknesses? Strengths versus, where do I put my focus? I don't know. You said we naturally tend to focus on our weaknesses, and you're kind of trying to get people to also focus on their strengths. How do you think about that in terms of coaching other people? Where does that balance sit in terms of, yeah, strengths versus weaknesses?
It's an easy question for me to answer,
Yeah.
because I'm always going to focus on strengths
Great. Yeah.
and bring awareness to weaknesses. But strengths, we have inherent strength. We have natural abilities that we're either very acutely aware of, or maybe we're not even aware of. And sometimes we don't even know what our strengths are. So sometimes we look at our strengths as, well, I'm good at spreadsheets, and I'm good at this, and I'm good at that. And yet, what you also might find is actually you're a very personable person, and people are very approachable, but you don't think of that as a strength. And yet, bringing up the idea that you're an approachable person means that maybe that you're a very calm in chaos. Maybe that actually
Mm,
means that you have a skill set that you're not taking advantage of. Maybe when you have those conversations, you're bringing a lot of empathy. So maybe your strength is actually empathy and
yeah.
listening. So there's just, all I'm saying really is that there's so much more to uncover.
Yeah.
No one who comes to me can just say, "Yeah, I know my strengths don't bother." It's like,
Yeah.
sure, we know some of your strengths, but actually, do we know all of your strengths? And actually, where do they show up, and how are they reliable? And how do you feel when you're in that place of operating from a place of strength? I, so the other thing I wanted to just share, because it just popped into my brain, is coaching is nerve wracking for some people. It's, oh my God, I'm going to get psychoanalyzed. People are going to tell me all the things that I'm wrong. And it's like, no, that's not the job at all. The difference between sort of therapy and coaching is quite clear for coaches. The simplest way I can describe it is therapy is to really look back to get you to where you are here. Coaching is to take you from where you are here to where you want to go. So it is naturally an encouraging place, but we have to do corrective behavior along the way. So I focus on strengths because why wouldn't you want to focus on identifying what you're great at?
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly beating yourself up. You're constantly getting feedback saying maybe you're not good at this, maybe you're not good at that, and in your brain you're thinking about, I'm an imposter, I can't do this, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, someone's going to find me out that I'm a fraud. And in actual fact, you've got a thousand things that have proven to you that you're great at a lot of things. You just don't pay any attention to it. So bring attention to it, lift people up, energize them, motivate them, make them feel powerful in their own way. And then it's going to be much easier to look at the things that maybe do need to be corrected through a lens of, I'm a good person and I have to do this work.
Yeah. And it makes sense too that, in many ways, our greatest strengths are probably the things that we discount because they're the things that were easy for us, like that just started happening. It's like the fish not knowing they're swimming in water. It seemed like a natural state to their life, so it was never something that they had to develop, and so you don't really realize it. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have many people? I don't know. I'm sure you deal with a lot of type A people. They're trying to be great. Like, how often do people push back on that focus on strengths? Do people want to keep pressing on their weaknesses ever, or I don't know? What do you see?
Um, the short answer is not really no. The
Oh, great.
reason why is that I'm a type A person, and and I think you're a type A person. Did we have this conversation? Are you
we
there?
haven't probably, but we haven't.
So I love working with type A people. The reason is that I think I know them really really well, and type A people are incredibly self critical because we love to move things forwards, to achieve things, to have goals, to be achievement orientated, and it can get harsh up in here when you're a type A because you're constantly pushing, moving things forwards, and you're leveling up, and then you hit walls constantly. Am I any good at this? I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job. So in your head, you can really trip yourself up. And a lot of type A's have these moments. This is when I meet type A's actually, is that they give themselves over to the people that they're working with, their team, their clients, their companies, their priorities as a group, and all this sort of stuff. And they give a lot of their energy away, and they're phenomenal at it. They're very natural leaders, by most of them, honestly. And yet they hit this wall. What's next? And then they don't have a plan for themselves. They're not really excited about their personal goals and stuff
Interesting.
like that. So then they start to become a little less enthusiastic, and then they make different decisions, and then they start questioning, and then they start researching. I'm not really content anymore. I'm not happy anymore because the achievement,
Mm,
that's sort of, I'm not saying addiction's the wrong word, but that sort of,
yeah.
I want to, the hunger and desire to achieve needs to be satiated in some way. So when they work with someone like me, I fill them up. You're great at this. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. You've proven yourself 1,000 times. Why don't you see it? Oh, I am really good at it. I feel phenomenal. I feel like a superhero. So then, from that place, type A's are absolutely gangbusters. But when
Yeah.
they're on the downside, they can be quite detrimental to themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And that makes sense. I remember when I was kind of getting ready for this discussion and looking at your website and looking at your LinkedIn page, one of the two words that popped out a lot were energy and clarity. That was kind of through what we've already been discussing, those two ideas I feel like are kind of in the background of a lot of what you're helping people with. Where did that come from? Where did those ideas of energy and clarity come from for you?
Yeah, the simplest way to describe it is that I've always known that energy is how people communicate. Uh, an
That's
example
interesting.
of that, yeah, an example of that is, and I think science has proven this over and over and over again. And I'm going to hatchet anything if I put spout numbers out there, but this is how I believe. If you walk into a room, or if you're in a room, and someone walks into that room and they're in a bad mood, and say they're in a senior
Mm,
executive role,
yeah.
the room shuts down.
Mm,
Everyone reorganizes, their posture gets organized, they don't feel that they can share. That's energy. No one
yeah.
said a single thing. That's purely you're communicating with whatever this is. The opposite is also true. If you go into a room and there's sort of chaos in there, or confusion in there, or sort of uncertainty or unhappiness, and you go in there with clear, sort of calm confidence, you can change the room just by the presence. And again, that's energy. So
Hmm.
communication is energy. Words have meaning, they add value. So I can say something, for example, like when you're observing someone communicate, I could say to you, I'm really happy right now. And energetically that that's not true.
Yeah.
My body language, yes, you're observing me and all this stuff, but there's also an energy to that also. So I've always known these things for myself, and I'm a very sort of a believer in that type of approach. And then clarity, I think, is just under talked about really.
Yeah.
Here's how I communicate it the simplest way, because I'm all about team performance and leadership performance. uh, if there is any confusion around where we're going, why we're going there, or what my role is, that uncertainty equates to lower confidence
Yeah.
in how do I apply myself, which automatically goes to a lower performance. So then clarity is the point of the route there. So if you take clarity, high levels of clarity create high levels of confidence because I know what to do, like high levels of certainty. I know what to do, when to do it, how to apply myself equals high performance.
Yeah.
So clarity is the differentiator. The more clear you are, the higher performance. Less
Yep.
clear, lower performance.
Yep. No, absolutely. There's so many different. It's interesting. So, because I love how you just explained that, because I don't know if I would have arrived at that from my initial thought of what you meant by energy and clarity, but really the way you just described it means like these are the two things that as a leader you need to manage, you need to lead to, you need to figure out what you need to drive to bringing energy to the room, to the conversation, and bringing clarity to the room and the conversation, which makes so much sense. Have you ever read anything by Lisa Feldman Barrett?
No.
One of her books is called How Emotions Are Made, and I would highly recommend you read it, because it everything that you just said really laces in. She's a neuroscience researcher, and How Emotions Are Made talks about how all of our emotions are really coming from this system inside us that is all about energy management, right? What your body is always trying to do ultimately is decide, do I have enough energy to survive, today, tomorrow, next week? And both energy, the energy that you're bringing and the clarity you're bringing feed into that. Where if the boss brings low energy into a room, that means my body starts to assume something's wrong with the company, something's wrong with the revenue, my job is at risk, my family is at risk. And even if it's all subconscious, that's what's happening inside our brains. And so that's why low energy brings low energy, because we become scared, and it just becomes like you can't bring yourself and your productivity to the project in the same way. I Yeah, I've never really.
I'm gonna read this book because there's something that you were saying that I want to build off of.
Yeah.
Is we're talking about very simple terms here, energy
Yes.
and clarity,
Yeah.
uh, but um, what you're also bringing up is that a leader, and a leader can be anyone. It doesn't have
Yes.
to be sort of hierarchical. You can be a parent or a friend group, or in any sort of situation where you're influencing and motivating people to go somewhere to do something, right? There's a natural, and leadership is energetic. By you're having to motivate, influence. These are human things. We are humans. We are energy
Yeah.
fields, as it were.
Yeah.
But the thing that really resonated with me is that when you dig into it, we're communicators. And you go back to the leadership analogy of someone walking into a room. You can have a bad day. That's fair. You could have had something,
Yes.
really frustrating happen to you, and you're not in a good place. Yet your responsibility as you walk into that room is to be in a good place, because that's how you're reliable. That's what we need, because your job is to help us go there. Our
Yeah.
job is to do these things. So you can have a conversation with yourself, like, and shake it off. For the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be in this level of energy. And then you will walk in with that level of energy. And that's how powerful it is. It's that simple. It's
Yeah.
also a conscious decision to do those things. And, a lot of the training that I went through, which I've been through many different programs, but one I really appreciated a lot was the conscious leadership. And that was really uh, sort of working on the idea that we have three centers of intelligence that are constantly communicating to us. We have our head, our traditional sort of intelligence, as it were, our
Yeah.
IQ. We have our heart, which is our emotional intelligence. We have our gut, which is our body intelligence or our intuition.
Yeah.
And they are constantly talking to you. And it's very rare that your body lies to you. Your head lies to you
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And your heart, your emotions are generally feeding off of your thoughts, which inform your behaviors. But your gut is an underutilized. My body talks to me all the time. Now I'm aware of it. I used to be very sort of closed to that, but I get goosebumps all the time. And my goosebumps are signs that, oh, I've hit onto something that really my body really reacted to. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're actually looking at this, look at it as a Venn diagram. Something comes in and you feel agitated. Why do I feel agitated? What
Mm-hmm.
is my intuition telling me? Then you start to like understand from an energetic perspective, and you have more perspective by nature, so you can actually look at things non-reactive, in a non-reactive fashion. So you're not so impulsive. You're not actually responding to your emotions, which maybe you were just triggered by something because, I don't know, 2 weeks ago someone else said the same word to you, and the result was this. You maybe, just managing off a historical fact, not what's in the room. So this is all about energy leadership.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's an amazing. It all goes back to that, kind of that self leadership and self understanding and introspection of understanding where these feelings are coming from. Um, and I do think it's something that we often forget about, especially when people are new leaders. We forget that we do have that role of kind of putting we're protecting is maybe the wrong word, but we're putting some kind of barrier between or around our team in a couple different ways. One from our own emotions, and then maybe from top level leadership or things like that. But especially when it comes to when you're working with somebody and trying to help them understand, okay, I had a bad day, but now I still need to show up for my team. Other than we can say shake it off, we can say think about it, move on. How do you help people do that? What are some like practical things that somebody can do if I just got off a call with my boss or with my spouse or my partner, and oh man, I had this argument and now I'm going into a big meeting where I need to show up? How can people make that transition? What are some techniques that people can use?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll talk about it from my perspective first, because it's good to come through your own lens. What works for you doesn't necessarily work for me. Uh,
Very
for
true. Very
me,
true.
for me, I just need to do I need to either talk about it or I need to go for a walk. I need some space. I need some nature. I need some sunshine. I need to hug a tree, whatever it is. Put my
That's
feet in the
awesome.
grass, but
Yeah.
grounding. And, we talk about energy. Everything out here is energy. The trees, I mean, I love watching those documentaries where they show you how like trees and plants communicate with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like we can't deny these things. So let's embrace them as part of our healing, as it were. I think meditation really helps, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. I studied positive intelligence, which is around mental fitness, and
Mm.
part of that is actually using the body to sort of regulate your nervous system. Then you've
Hmm.
also got breathing, box breathing. So I will utilize whatever comes up in the moment. My favorite is if I have 30 minutes, I'm walking. I'm immediately out of my computer, off my phone, and I'm walking because that's what my body prefers.
Yep. Yep.
So for me to deregulate with breathing is fine and good, and sometimes I'll do it. Meditation, I actually love meditation, but I find it really difficult to do in reactive situations
Sure.
without
Yeah.
someone guiding me through it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's such a great point, though, of it really is everybody's going to be a little bit different in what they need to do. And so, trying out some of these different things to see what works for you um, is really what people have got to do. Um, I don't know. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. Any other, kind of are there any particular more common challenges that you're helping folks through right now that crop up with leaders that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah. I think there's a few core ones which are universal at the moment, which
Yeah.
is um, it's it's hard being a leader.
Hmm.
Uh, leadership is leadership is going through a transition. I'd say it's an era defining moment in time where there's still a lot of people in the workforce that are in senior roles that say they're leaders, but they don't operate in a way that the younger generations, the newer generations who are coming into management, soon to be into executive roles, communicate.
Hmm.
They do not communicate the same. They're like different from different planets, honestly. So you've got this command and control, do it as I say type of like 80s, 90s, early 2000s energy, which is a little, macho in some ways or competitive or aggressive. And that's just not cutting it. It's simply not cutting it. And no one wants it. And yet we're still working through that.
Yep.
And not everyone from that generation is like that, but that was how they were conditioned. That's what success was looked like. So it's no judgment. It's just not working.
Yep.
And then you've got these new generations. I'd say myself included is part of that. Is that we want to feel respected. We want to feel a
Mm.
part of the solution. We want to be around people. We don't go to work to be bullied. We go to work to show up, to do the work, to collaborate, to communicate, to achieve. We go there because we want to, not because we're being sort of you know controlled to, if you know what I mean. And there's just a
Yep.
massive shift in the world happening. And I think we're a relatively early part of this big shift, but it's very consistent. It's all about being more of a human being in the workplace. And yet the challenge is that people they feel really burnt out. They don't feel like they have permission to say no to things. They feel like they have to. Um, so mental health is I'd say a big challenge for most organizations right now. Productivity is directly related to how healthy your workforce is.
It's
And
true.
also then there's the economy of everything. It costs more to do things, so everything's sort of working and breaking and being rebuilt. How do we get our workers to do more for less? How do we so there's a lot of sort of big losses of workforces in big companies at the moment. So it's pressure filled. Like we are
Yep.
going through pressure. So there's a lot of people that need a lot of support, and they're questioning whether this is going to work out on an individual level or on a team level. But I believe and this is because I'm an optimist, but I believe you can have your cake and eat it. I think there's a way, if you use clarity, if you use prioritization, if you use like really understanding who you are and what you want out of your own career, who you are as a leader and how you're prepared to bring people together to solve things, we can solve these things.
Yeah.
If you're going to come in with a hard stick and beat people around, they're just going to bail because no one is, it's unacceptable and no one's going to tolerate it. And that's, yeah, that's the place we live right now.
I mean, but what a tremendous opportunity that creates for leaders of, we live in a world that is where every news story is about how things are going to end. Social media is all just like filled with negative comments. Like so much of the just world is focused on this negativity and negative energy. And if you can create a bubble of positive energy, and then similarly, we live in a world of all this uncertainty of, is AI going to take all of our jobs? Is nuclear war about to break out? Like, is the economy about to crash? If you can create a bubble of clarity, so if you can create if you as a leader can create a space where on your team, people come to work and they know there's going to be positive energy, where they are clear about what is expected of them and what needs to happen, like you'd create a world where people would just flock to you, because you'd be such a
Absolutely.
break from the rest of the world. And it's just such a flip of how normally we think about work as the place we don't want to go and we want to go on vacation. But you have the opportunity in the world today to make work kind of the vacation from the rest of the world, which would, I mean, be pretty incredible.
That's a really nice way of putting it. I haven't heard it that way. For to really pivot the table, so it's like I don't want to go home from work. Not I don't want to
Yeah.
go to work.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's I believe in what you're saying is creating that bubble. But what I really truly hear you saying is creating that psychological safety, which is what people
Yeah.
talk about, which is I'm allowed to be myself here. I feel that I'm allowed to show up fully, to engage fully towards what we're all working towards in an environment where I feel respected and challenged and motivated and all of these things. And that is what we all want. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually having this discussion today because I'm actually getting coaching right now because my ADHD is flaring up. So I hired a specific coach, an ADHD coach, and I was sharing with her that, part of the challenge that I have is that I don't like being told what to do. I
Mm-hmm.
love to be asked what we want to do or how to
Mm-hmm.
do it together and all these sorts of things, but I do not like being told what to do. And I'm not being like an irritating teenager here. I'm just saying that it's not the best way to motivate me. And yet, I am telling myself, this was the insight today, I am telling myself what to do. And I'm actually
Mm.
pushing back against myself. So this is
Interesting.
why my ADHD is like flaring up because it's saying no, Justin, you don't tell me what to do, and I'm like, but you have to do this, else you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve, and I'm like, no, so I'm being rebellious. So I associate that with the workplace. If you tell me what to do, and you tell me how to live and you tell me how to operate, I'm gonna rebel against you. So
Yeah.
that is not an inclusive environment. That is not a place that I feel safe. I need to know that you know who I am, how to motivate me, why it's important to me in the way you communicate, in the way you give feedback. I want my leader to represent all of those things. That is hard. That's hard work. Because say you got a team of 6 people, 6 individuals, all motivated differently, all
Mm-hmm.
different needs, psychological needs, emotional needs, all of that. And you have to do the work and you have to reach the goals and you have to serve the company and the clients. It's comes back to the pressure, man.
Yep.
It's a you sign up to be a leader. It's I would say it's a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where I love that so many companies now are adopting these dual track career ladders where
Mm,
it's not just the only way forward is to become a manager. You can move forward as an individual contributor because you're 100% right. Like it needs to be a thing that you choose to do, not something that you feel like you have to
that's
do
right.
because it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no shame in being a subject matter expert. what you're actually, the only reason you're going in that other track is you want the pay or the recognition. So if we take these away and say you can actually achieve pay this way,
Yep.
then they're going to choose, actually, yeah, I don't want to manage people. It's really challenging, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It is challenging, but it can come down to, you can still boil it down to some discrete skills. And that's why I think I've loved this conversation so much. I've never heard it quite talked about in terms of something like energy and clarity of thinking about how do I manage those things and think about those things. So I think even just that framing is going to give people a lot to think about, which I really like. What's the best way for people to follow you? I think you're getting more active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, which is where my ADHD is flaring up. Yeah, I'm active on there. I'm building community on there, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Meeting a lot of really interesting people on there. So you can find me at Justin Hills on LinkedIn. It's a yellow circle with my face planted on it. So yeah, reach out. I'd love to talk to people. I really enjoy being on that channel. You can go to my website. My website currently of this date is very much out of date, but you can also find me. You can sort
Yeah.
of see who I am and what I believe in. I'll update it soon. That's pretty much it. It's the best way to get me.
Awesome.
My business is called Courageous and Co. The reason why it's called that is because I think it takes courage. I think it takes a lot of courage to lead, and it takes it takes collaboration. It takes a company. It takes people.
Nice.
So yeah, reach out. I'd love to speak to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was honestly I really love this discussion. I thought I personally got a lot out of it. So I hope other people did as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening today. And Justin, you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. If you want to see more discussions like this, then make sure to check out some of the videos right over there. And while you're at it, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really helps improve our reach and gives us the fuel we need to bring you more of these great conversations. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we will see you next time on the Making Better podcast.